You'll probably get Dad's old watch if you're lucky. Those were my brother's exact words the morning of the will reading. The laugh that followed wasn't just cruel. It echoed through the marble hallway like a verdict. I stood there, clutching the same photo frame I'd brought to Dad's hospital room, the one he never got to see again. I thought grief would bring us closer. Instead, it made him vicious. And as the lawyer opened his briefcase, I realized something was terribly wrong. Dad had changed everything without telling anyone. Beep. That's when Ethan's smirk vanished, and my entire life tilted in one sentence. My name is Stella Hale, and I never imagined that losing my father would feel like losing my entire family in the same breath. For 27 years I was the quiet one, the daughter who stayed out of the family business, who helped Dad with his health appointments while Ethan ran the show. Everyone believed the Hale construction empire would be his one day. Even I believed it. Dad's passing was sudden. A heart attack at the office, surrounded by blueprints and dust. He'd always said, "This company will outlive me." I didn't know he meant that literally. At the funeral, Ethan didn't cry. He shook hands like it was a board meeting. He even thanked clients for attending. I tried to speak, but my throat burned shut. When I finally managed to whisper, "He was a good man," Ethan muttered. "Yeah, especially to me." That was the first crack. Days later, Mom retreated into silence, avoiding eye contact whenever the business came up. Something felt off, like they all knew a secret I wasn't supposed to discover. The lawyer's call confirmed it. We were to meet Monday morning for the official reading. Only family. No spouses. No assistants. The night before I barely slept. I replayed every memory of Dad teaching me to sand wood, his hands guiding mine over rough edges. He'd always said, "You've got patience, Stell. That's rarer than talent." Those words haunted me as Ethan revved his new car outside, the one Dad bought him as a business incentive. When we arrived, the lawyer, Mr. Darnell, gray-haired and severe, barely looked up before saying, "Your father left detailed instructions." Ethan leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Let's not waste time. We all know how this goes." But I noticed something strange. There were 2 envelopes on the table. One with Ethan's name. One with mine, sealed in red wax. Dad's old habit when he wanted something kept private. The air thickened. Mr. Darnell opened Ethan's first. His confidence filled the room like cologne. Then the lawyer frowned. He flipped a page. And Ethan's grin slowly disappeared. "Mr. Hale," the lawyer said carefully, "you might want to sit down." Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Mr. Darnell adjusted his glasses. "Your father made some amendments." The sound of Mr. Darnell's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Your father made some amendments." Ethan's smirk collapsed into a twitch. He leaned forward, elbows on the oak table, his designer watch flashing under the ceiling light. "Amendments? What do you mean? He signed everything over to me years ago." Mr. Darnell cleared his throat. "That's not entirely true anymore." He unfolded a document that looked new. Fresh ink, recent dates. 3 months before his death, your father revised his will and trust. He created a holding clause for both the house and Hale Construction. Ethan shot me a glare. She must have talked him into it. You always were his favorite pity project. My heart pounded. I didn't even know he was rewriting anything. But in my gut a memory surfaced. The afternoon I found Dad working in his study, muttering to himself about fixing what's broken. I'd offered tea and he'd just smiled. "You'll understand someday, Stell." Now I was beginning to. Mr. Darnell continued. "According to this clause, ownership isn't transferred immediately. Instead, both heirs must meet the conditions your father outlined." He pushed 2 sealed envelopes across the table. Ethan's was plain white. Mine was sealed with that familiar red wax, stamped with Dad's carpenter's emblem, the letter inside a circle of laurel leaves. The symbol of his trust. And his test. Ethan snatched his envelope open, reading silently, lips curling with irritation. He wants me to keep the business running profitably for 12 months before the transfer. Easy. He slammed the papers down. What's hers? I didn't move. The envelope felt heavier than it should. My fingers trembled as I broke the wax. Inside, a handwritten note. Dad's handwriting, steady but tired. Stella, if you're reading this, I'm gone. You were always the heart of this family. If Ethan forgets what I taught him, you must remember it. Go to the old workshop before you claim anything. What you find there will guide you. Dad. I looked up, stunned. The workshop. Ethan scoffed. He's still playing games from the grave. But I knew Dad never did anything without purpose. That dusty shed behind the main house had been locked for years after an electrical fire. He'd forbidden anyone from entering, not even Mom. Mr. Darnell folded his hands. Miss Hale, you're free to visit the property any time. Everything you discover is legally yours to document. Ethan barked a laugh. What, she'll find another one of his birdhouses. His words bounced off the walls, but I barely heard them. My pulse drummed with a mix of fear and curiosity. Something about Dad's tone in that letter. If Ethan forgets, you must remember. Sounded like more than affection. Sounded like warning. That night, I stood outside the workshop door, moonlight pooling on the cracked padlock. I held Dad's key ring in my shaking hand, the one he'd hidden behind his office photo, and whispered, "All right, Dad. I'm here." The key slid in easily. The door groaned open. Inside, a faint scent of cedar and machine oil hit me. And on the workbench lay a dusty metal box, engraved with my initials. The hinges shrieked as I lifted the lid. Inside was a single leather-bound notebook, a small flash drive, and a blueprint, old, yellowed, creased at the corners. The title at the top read, Hale Construction, Property Expansion Plan 2010. But it wasn't the company logo that caught my eye. It was the handwritten note on the bottom corner. Not for Ethan's eyes. My breath hitched. I traced the ink with trembling fingers. The handwriting was undeniably Dad's. For a moment, the room spun with the weight of it. The smell of sawdust and metal filled my lungs. His scent. I felt 12 again, helping him organize nails while he told me stories about his first failed project. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. A folder popped up, password protected. I tried his birthday. Nothing. Still locked. But when I typed Ethan's, it opened instantly. Inside were scanned letters, receipts, and contracts dated years back. Some were addressed to the City Zoning Commission, others to a private investor. The last document made my stomach twist. Transfer of partial ownership. Hale Construction, 35% to Stella Hale, in trust. 35%. I whispered aloud. Dad, you already gave me part of the business. Why hadn't he told me? A low creak startled me. Turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, half drunk, his tie undone, eyes bloodshot. How long have you been snooping? I closed the laptop, heart racing. This is Dad's workshop, not yours. He smirked. Correction, it's all mine. Or it will be. You think some scribbles in a notebook will change that? He stepped closer, snatched the flash drive from my hand, and pocketed it. You were always the sentimental fool. You don't belong in this business, Stella. You belong behind a desk writing diaries about dead dreams. I swallowed hard. You didn't even visit him in the hospital. That landed like a slap. His jaw tightened. Because I was trying to save his company while you played nurse. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the hinges rattled. My knees buckled. I sat on the cold concrete, clutching Dad's notebook to my chest. When I opened it again, more secrets spilled out. Handwritten meeting notes with someone named H. Grayson. Every line dripped with urgency. Must finalize trust papers before surgery. Ethan cannot handle pressure. Tell Stella when time is right. It wasn't just about inheritance. It was a plan. A warning. And buried at the back was a small envelope labeled, for Mr. Darnell only. I didn't sleep that night. My hands shook as I called the lawyer first thing in the morning. He agreed to meet me privately. When I arrived, he was already waiting with that envelope on his desk. "Your father sent this to me a week before he died," he said softly. "He wanted me to give it to you only when you found the other documents." Tore it open. Inside was a simple line written in Dad's hand. "If Ethan ever claims everything, show him what he sold." I looked up confused. "What he sold?" Mr. Darnell exhaled. "Miss Hale, it seems your brother made a financial move your father never forgave him for." "What move?" He opened a drawer, pulled out an old file stamped confidential, Ethan's signature scrawled across the top. "He sold company land to a shell firm 6 years ago, without your father's approval. Your dad spent years buying it back quietly, under your name." My world tilted. The workshop, the flash drive, the blueprint, it all made sense now. But before I could speak, Mr. Darnell's assistant rushed in. "Sir, Mr. Ethan Hale is here. He says it's urgent." Froze. Ethan walked in, his expression cold as steel. "You really think you're winning this, sis?" he said, tossing the stolen flash drive onto the desk. "Because I just hired someone who's about to make your life very complicated." Ethan stood there in Mr. Darnell's office like he owned the place. His suit was wrinkled, his arrogance freshly pressed. "I'm filing for contestation of the will," he said coolly. "Dad wasn't in his right mind when he made those changes. And if you're smart, Stella, you'll walk away quietly." I clenched my hands in my lap. "You're lying. You just don't like what you found." He smirked. "What I found is leverage. You've got Dad's little diary, but I've got witnesses who'll say he was losing it. Actors, accountants, even Mom." "Mom," I whispered, stunned. Mr. Darnell frowned. "You understand this is a serious accusation, Mr. Hale?" Ethan shrugged. "Serious times, counselor." When he left, Mr. Darnell rubbed his temples. "He's bluffing, but it'll be messy. The court will freeze assets until the matter is resolved." "Then what do I do?" I asked. He looked at me with quiet sympathy. "You find proof. Something undeniable that ties you to the company legally, not just sentimentally." That night I went back to the workshop. Rain battered the windows, lightning casting sharp flashes over Dad's old drafting table. The notebook still lay open where I'd left it. But this time I noticed something I hadn't before, a tiny line etched under the back cover. "The truth is buried beneath the foundation." First I thought it was metaphorical. But then I remembered something Dad once said when I was little. "Everything I build I mark, so if someone tears it down, they'll still find me underneath." I grabbed a flashlight and went out to the construction yard behind the workshop. Mud splashed under my boots as I found the old concrete foundation where Dad had started his Phase 2 project. In the corner, beneath a rusted plaque, something metallic glinted. I dug with my hands until my nails broke. Finally I pulled out a sealed metal tube. Inside was a USB drive, a notarized trust agreement, and a voice recording dated 8 months before Dad's death. When I pressed play, his voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, Stella, it means Ethan's done what I feared. He tried to sell our legacy for cash. I placed copies of every fraudulent transfer, every illegal signature in this archive. You'll need Mr. Darnell to verify them. Protect what's left." My chest tightened. The betrayal, the foresight, it all collided at once. But the worst part. The voice trembled as he spoke the final words. "Forgive your brother if you can. He was just chasing approval he never earned." I sat there in the rain, crying into my sleeves. The man I'd trusted most had turned into the very thing Dad feared, and now he was coming for me legally. By morning the story hit the local business news. Headline: Hale heir accused of manipulating dying father's will. Ethan's PR team worked fast. He was painting me as the villain, a gold-digging daughter stealing from her grieving mother and brother. But he didn't know what I had buried in that metal tube. And when I showed the evidence to Mr. Darnell, he smiled grimly. Miss Hale, I believe this is enough to destroy his case completely. Still, I wasn't ready for what happened next. Because the person who delivered Ethan's legal strategy against me wasn't a stranger. It was Mom. I froze when I saw her name on the affidavit. Margaret Hale, my own mother. She'd signed a sworn statement claiming Dad had been mentally unfit before his death. My knees weakened as Mr. Darnell slid the papers across the desk. I'm sorry, Stella. She's corroborating Ethan's claim. I stared at the signature, the same looping M she'd used on every birthday card. Why would she do this? I whispered. He hesitated. There's a clause in the trust that mentions her pension. If the will gets overturned, she retains lifetime access to all Hale assets. If it stands, she only receives what your father assigned, half the liquid estate. So she'd chosen comfort over truth. That night, I went home to confront her. The house felt colder, emptier, like the walls were holding their breath. She sat in the living room, sipping tea like nothing was wrong. Mom, I said quietly, you sided with Ethan. Her eyes didn't flinch. I sided with reason. Your father was sick, Stella. You're being manipulated by lawyers. No, I said, pulling the USB from my pocket. Dad recorded everything. For the first time, her face drained of color. Where did you get that? From the workshop. He left it for me. She set her teacup down hard enough to crack the saucer. You shouldn't have gone there. Why not? Press. Because that's where the truth lives. She stood abruptly. You think you know everything. But your father wasn't the saint you imagine. He had debts, secrets. He wanted to protect you from it. What debts? She looked away. Ask your brother. The silence between us stretched like glass. Finally, she said, you were always too naive to understand business. Your father trusted you with his heart, not his empire. Ethan knows how to survive. I swallowed the ache in my throat. No, Mum. He knows how to destroy. When I left, she didn't stop me. Just stared out the window, lost somewhere between guilt and fear. The next morning, Ethan called. His voice was smooth, smug. You're making this worse for yourself. Drop the case, and I'll give you a settlement. Cash, no publicity. I laughed bitterly. You think I care about money? This is about Dad's legacy. Legacy doesn't pay lawyers, Stella, he said coldly and hung up. By afternoon, Mr. Darnell called again. The court scheduled an emergency hearing. Ethan's team filed for a full injunction to seize Hale construction assets until the will's validity is proven. They can't. Gasp. They can, and they have. We'll need that recording verified by a forensic expert immediately. That night, I drove to Dad's old office to search for more evidence. Lightning flickered across the empty building. On his desk, beneath layers of dust, I found a folder titled Private Shareholder. Inside was a name I didn't expect. Henry Grayson. The same man from the notebook. The man Dad mentioned in secret meetings. But there was something else. An unsigned letter from Henry to Dad. If Ethan pushes this sale, I'll expose his offshore accounts. You were right. He's been siphoning funds through the South Division for years. Froze. Ethan hadn't just betrayed Dad emotionally. He'd stolen from him. Finding Henry Grayson wasn't easy. His name barely existed online. No photos, no addresses. But Mr. Darnell had one lead. A P.O. box in an industrial district on the outskirts of the city. I drove there myself, heart hammering, headlights slicing through fog. When I knocked on the warehouse door, an elderly man answered, tall and sharp-eyed despite his years. Mr. Grayson. Yes. He studied me for a long moment before nodding. You look like your father. I found your name in his notes. He said you were his partner. He motioned me inside. The space was filled with tools, half-built models, and files stacked to the ceiling. Your father and I built Hale Construction together in the early days. I left when your brother started meddling. Why? Grayson sighed. Ethan was laundering money through fake subcontractors. Your father caught him and nearly reported it, but he couldn't bear to ruin his own son. So we built a safety net. I became the silent shareholder of record, and your father transferred part ownership to you under my custodianship. My mind reeled. That means... It means the court documents you have are legitimate. You already own 35%, legally and irrevocably. Ethan can't touch that. Tears stung my eyes. Then why didn't Dad tell me? Grayson's voice softened. Because he hoped Ethan would change. He wanted peace more than revenge. I sat down, overwhelmed. He's contesting the will. He's turning Mom against me. Grayson nodded slowly. He'll lose if you stand firm. But you'll need proof of the laundering. I have it, all of it. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick binder labeled South Division Payments. Pages of false invoices, wire transfers, and offshore account numbers filled the sheets. This, he said, is what your father spent years recovering. He wanted to reveal it when you were ready. My voice shook. He knew this day would come. Grayson smiled sadly. He knew his daughter would be the one to finish what he couldn't. Before I left, he handed me a small wooden box. Inside was Dad's old pocket watch. Your father left this for you, he said. Said it wasn't about time, it was about timing. That night I sat in my car, the city lights blurring through rain. Opened the watch. Inside the cover was a tiny engraving. Truth prevails in patience. I called Mr. Darnell immediately. We have proof. Everything. Financial fraud, embezzlement, hidden accounts. His voice crackled with relief. Then it's over, Stella. We'll submit the evidence tomorrow. But as I drove home, headlights flared behind me. Bright, aggressive, tailing me through the dark. I turned corners, sped through yellow lights. Car stayed close. When I pulled into my driveway, the engine behind me revved and sped off into the night. A shiver ran through me. Someone didn't want me to make it to court. The night before the trial, I barely slept. Every sound outside felt amplified. The wind against the window, the ticking clock, the weight of the watch in my palm. Mr. Darnell had called hours earlier. Stella, we have enough evidence to end this tomorrow. But you must stay safe. Don't travel alone. He didn't know about the car that followed me home. Or the shadow that paused under the streetlight, watching my porch before vanishing into darkness. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of documents. Fake invoices, wire transfers, and Dad's final letters. Every piece of paper was a story of betrayal, but also of trust. Dad had believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. That thought became my anchor. At 3 a.m. I heard a faint creak. My heart stopped. Someone was inside. I grabbed the nearest thing, a metal lamp, and stepped into the hallway. A shadow moved past the doorway. Who's there? I whispered. The voice that answered almost broke me. It's me, said Mom softly. Froze. Mom, what are you doing here? She stepped into the light, her eyes red, her coat soaked. I didn't know where else to go. Ethan, he's lost control. What do you mean? She collapsed into a chair, trembling. He found out about Grayson. He said he'd handle it his way. I think he's planning something stupid, Stella. I grabbed her hand. Then tell me the truth. Why did you side with him? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because I was afraid. After your father died, Ethan promised he'd take care of me. He said if I didn't support his claim, he'd cut me off, that I'd lose the house. And you believed him. She nodded weakly. I thought he'd change once the business was his. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who betrayed me, but as a mother clinging to the only security she thought she had. I handed her a file. Then help me fix this. Sign this affidavit tomorrow. Tell the court what really happened. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, I will. The next morning when I arrived at court, the press was already there. Ethan stood by the marble steps, smirking for cameras, his arm around a corporate attorney twice his size. When he saw me, his grin faltered, because Mom was standing beside me. Inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. Ethan's lawyer opened first, painting me as an emotional daughter twisting her father's memory. Then Mr. Darnell rose, calm as ever. Your Honor, the late Mr. Hale left behind undeniable evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and corporate manipulation, all orchestrated by the defendant. He opened the binder Grayson had given me. Pages rustled like thunder. Ethan's attorney jumped up. Objection. These documents are fabricated. Mr. Darnell smiled. Then let's hear from the man who helped write them. The door opened. Henry Grayson walked in. Ethan's face turned pale. The moment Henry Grayson entered the courtroom, you could feel the temperature drop. He walked with quiet authority, the kind that comes from knowing too much and fearing nothing. Mr. Grayson, the judge said, you're prepared to testify under oath? He nodded. I am. Ethan sat rigid beside his lawyer, jaw clenched. Grayson began calmly. I co-founded Hale Construction with the late Thomas Hale. In 2017, we discovered unauthorized financial activity. Company assets being redirected to shell companies. The individual responsible was Ethan Hale. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. That's a lie. Grayson's eyes didn't waver. We traced the transfers to accounts in his name. Your father begged me not to press charges, hoping his son would come clean. The judge leaned forward. Do you have documentation? Mr. Darnell stepped forward. We do, Your Honor. Authenticated by independent auditors. He handed over the files. The judge skimmed through them, his brows knitting tighter with every page. When Ethan's attorney tried to object, Grayson dropped the bombshell. The properties sold through those shell firms. They were quietly repurchased by Thomas Hale and re-registered under his daughter's name, Stella Hale. Stunned silence. The courtroom shifted. Every reporter scribbled furiously. Mom's hand trembled in mine. Ethan's confidence shattered like glass. He shot to his feet. You can't prove intent. My father wanted me to handle those assets. Grayson's reply was lethal. Then why did he record this? He played a clip from the recovered voice recording. Dad's voice, firm and tired. If Ethan betrays the company again, my daughter will inherit everything. The boy's greed can't lead this family. Ethan's attorney sank into his seat. The judge finally spoke. We've heard enough. I'm ordering a temporary injunction preventing Ethan Hale from accessing any Hale Construction accounts or property until further notice. A murmur of approval filled the room. Ethan turned toward me, eyes wild. You think this is over? You just destroyed the family name. I met his gaze steadily. No, Ethan. You did that when you forgot what our name stood for. He lunged like he might come across the bench, but bailiffs held him back. His lawyer whispered frantically, trying to calm him, but Ethan's fury boiled over. You'll regret this, Stella, he shouted. You'll lose everything like Dad did. But his words didn't land this time. Because for the first time the court and my mother saw the truth. When we stepped outside, reporters swarmed me with microphones. Miss Hale, is it true you've inherited the company? Will you press criminal charges against your brother? I didn't answer. I just said, my father believed in integrity. That's all that matters. That night I got a call from Mr. Darnell. The judge's ruling was just published. You're officially recognized as the majority owner of Hale Construction. I sank onto my couch, tears streaming silently. Dad's watch ticked softly on the table beside me. But before I could breathe easy, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. You may have won the court but not the company. The next 48 hours were chaos. Ethan had vanished, and with him nearly $800,000 in liquid company funds. Police were investigating, but it felt hollow. The company's board panicked. Clients pulled contracts. Headlines screamed, "Hale family feud shakes city construction giant." I sat in Dad's old chair, staring at his photo. "Why did you trust him so much?" I whispered. That's when I noticed something strange on the back of the picture frame. A small metal latch I'd never seen before. Inside was a folded piece of paper. "If you're reading this, it means Ethan has fallen too far. Look for the name, Sundown Holdings. That's where your future lies." I searched the company registry that night. Sundown Holdings was a quiet subsidiary, completely debt-free, fully owned by Hale Construction. And its CEO, me. Dad had created a fallback, a clean division untouched by Ethan's corruption. He'd left me a kingdom hidden beneath the ruins. The next morning I met with Grayson. When I showed him the document, he smiled. "Your father was 10 steps ahead." He knew Ethan would implode, so he built this as a restart mechanism. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. "Then we can rebuild." "We can rebuild," he said. "But only if you lead it." For the next 6 months, I worked harder than ever. We renamed the firm Hale and Grayson Builders. We rehired laid-off workers, settled debts, and reopened projects under transparent budgets. Clients slowly returned. Investors followed. And one evening, standing on the rooftop of our first completed building, a hospital wing named the Thomas Hale Foundation, I felt something shift inside me. The grief had finally turned into gratitude. But the story didn't end there. Because 3 months later, I received a letter from federal investigators. "Ethan Hale has been arrested at an airport in Singapore. Extradition pending." I stared at the paper for a long time. The ache in my chest wasn't victory. It was closure. I whispered to the night sky, "You were right, Dad. Truth does prevail in patience." The next morning Mom called. Her voice was shaky but soft. "He's being brought back, Stella." I don't know how to feel. "Neither do I said. "But we'll face it together." Ethan's sentencing day arrived under a gray, quiet sky. The courtroom was smaller this time. No reporters, no cameras. Just family, silence, and consequence. He looked thinner, older, the fire in his eyes replaced with regret. When the judge read his charges, fraud, embezzlement, falsification, he didn't argue, just nodded faintly. Before leaving, he turned to me. "I thought you were weak," he said hoarsely. "But you're the one who kept everything standing." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Outside, Mom wept quietly. "He's still my son," she said. "I know," I whispered. "And he's still Dad's lesson." Months passed. Hale and Grayson Builders grew into something Dad would have been proud of. Honest, respected, quietly powerful. We opened scholarships for architecture students. Funded homes for veterans. Every building we raised carried a plaque that read, "Built on integrity, the Hale Promise." One evening I walked back into Dad's old workshop. The air still smelled faintly of sawdust and oil. On the wall, his tools hung in perfect order, untouched. I sat at his desk, opened the old notebook, and wrote the final line beneath his last entry. "Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's who we become while protecting it." The sunset filtered through the window, painting everything gold. I could almost hear his voice saying, "You did good, Stell." As I locked up and stepped outside, the world felt lighter. The ghosts of betrayal, loss, and anger were finally gone, replaced by something Dad had always wanted for us: peace. I paused on the path, looked back at the house that started it all, and smiled. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered. "You built more than a company. You built me."